welcome back to Wargaming World and to France 1944 for an overdue game of Nuts. And so, because I haven't played Nuts in 2021, I'm actually going to play two games. One on this side, the right side of the manor house, and we're going to have an action here, really an action around this bridge area. And secondly, we're going to have action further along on this side, fighting for this farmhouse. So I'll tell you how we're going to do it. So the American 1st Division are here in 1944. They're in this manor house, and there's already been action. So on this side, on the right hand side here, you can see there's a smashed up Sherman, and also a building here, as the Americans have cleared a German unit. So we're going to have one section of an American platoon. The platoon is actually in this hotel here. I'm going to come out and clear and make sure there's no Germans remaining. So we will have the 3 PEF Germans as normal, and this is the grid, and you should be able to see it on your screen now. On the other side of the manor house, we have again a clearance required. So again, another section is going to move over to the farmhouse. Make sure there are no Germans there. You'll see there's been action already here, but just trying to make sure that there's no Germans in the area. Again, we'll have 3 PEF, and you should see the grid right about now. So the two games are going to be combined in such a way that we have the PEF in both games for the Germans. However, if they appear on the right hand side here, for example, and then get reinforcements, it might well be that we have nothing on the other side of the game. However, the Americans are still going to have to advance and get all the way through to the farmhouse to make sure that that's cleared. Again, if the advance is taking place over here and all the Germans appear in terms of their reinforcements, then we'll have nothing on the other side. Now, it's likely then that the Americans are going to be outnumbered at some point, perhaps, if reinforcements appear, and if they need to retreat, they can do, and they retreat back to the manor house, where there is the remaining section who at the moment are tending to the wounded of an earlier action, and they will also be supported by a half track if required, so therefore it should make this relatively even. And one final factor: it's absolutely pelting it down. So the rain is so hard that the visibility is extremely limited, and it's also dusk. So as a consequence, it's not really possible to be able to see from this side of the board to the other. So the two games are going to be fairly independent, up to the point where the Americans may withdraw all the way back to the manor house, and then we'll see how the game goes from there. Desperate fight at the Favour Farm. Okay, we need to start by having a look at our star. So this is Sergeant Power, and we're going to roll a D3 for the amount of stars he has. Star advantages. He's just going to have the one. Which one of the 4 is he going to get? Number 2. So he's larger than life, which means there's a bit of a Hollywood star. Can't be killed, only by somebody who's got a greater rep than him, and he's got a rep of 5. And the worst he can be is out of the fight. And that's just nice. This is going to be our section. So we have our hero. On the left hand side there we've got a bar team, so it's like a light machine gun. We've then got an NCO and a junior NCO, and we've got 4 riflemen. And for the rep, the units have a rep of 4. There are our German PEFs. 2 at 1, 1 at 4. And we need to know the rep of the Germans in game 1. Right, okay, so 6, so their rep is 5, certainly a veteran unit. And so this is the setup in game 1. We have our Americans here, and in terms of the PEF, we can see the first one, just at the back there. I'll just go closer in. There's a Fallschirmjäger there, just behind those cows, and over in 1 are those two Fallschirmjäger there. To add is that the hedges are about 8 foot high, so essentially walls. We could get over them, be struggling to do so. So the idea really is for the Americans to try and hug the hedges, and there is a gap over here. That will be the approach they take to get towards the farmhouse, which is their objective. Attack on Tricolor Bridge. On the other side here we've got Sergeant McCrory, so let's see how many stars he gets. Again, it's just the one. Okay, 3. So this is cheating death, which means effectively the star can be killed. However, he can cheat death, and although he's removed from the board, he can continue on wider campaigns, although he will lose 1 rep as a consequence. The thing we need to roll for is the amount of men in the squad. We get 7 men, plus 1d6. That's just 8. On this side we have our hero, and then we've got our NCO, junior NCO, the MG at the background there, and then we just have a further 3 rifles. And the unit rep have a rep of 4, and we now need to roll and see where the PEF will be. Okay, so we have a 3, 4 and a 6. In game 2 we have the Americans hugging the hedge line and getting some cover from this Sherman, and from the rolls that we had, we've got 1 of the PEF inside this garage, and secondly, just going further back, we've got 1 PEF here and 1 on the bridge. Taking the roof off both of the garage there, just in case the PEF move across, so you can see the inside. The rep of the Germans in game 2. So that means that they're going to have a rep of 4. So we're ready to start. We've got both of the games set up. What I'm going to do is to cover it turn by turn. So I'll be a turn for each side, because at some point we might combine and have the Americans in the centre, and also we know that in terms of the amount of units, the amount of German units that can appear, we have a maximum of 3 squads, so they may all appear here or across both games. So let's just see how we go, let's see if this works, and hopefully it'll be a good game. Okay, let's see who can be activated first turn, game 1. And the Germans can, but not the Americans. Well, they can't move, but the Americans might get reinforcements because we have a 7. We need to roll 1d6 for this. They are on a patrol, so we get a -1. So we start with a 3, which is the normal figure to start off with. -3 is a 2 plus a 1d6. It's a 5. So with a 5, that means that the spare squad, which is in this building, is now going to move into this area towards the farmers' reinforcements. So what we need to do is that we need to roll and see how many men appear. So we get 7 plus 1d6, just the 1, so it's 8 men, and we also need to have a look at our star that's appearing. So the Americans have very much played their hand. We have our men coming out here. We've got, on the left hand side, we've got the NCO and the junior NCO. Underneath the monument we've got our bar team. We've got 3 other rifles, and at the front here we've got our hero Sergeant Tompkins. So let's have a look at Tompkins and see what he has in terms of special skills. How many, first of all? Ah, right, okay, so we're going to get 3. For Tompkins, and we're going to have star power, larger than life, and cheap death. So it's going to be a superstar in the game, perhaps. But first of all, it's the Germans to act. Now, the Germans are attacking, so we need to see how many times we pass with the movement. I would add is on one of the variations you can do 8 inches for movement. I'm just going to stick to 6 for this one. So we're going to start off the unit that's on its own there, just behind the cows. See how many it passes. Okay, and that's 1. That means it doesn't move. We've got 2 further away, just over here behind, just behind the farm. So the first one of the 2, that's 2 past. The other, again, 2 past. And both move towards the Americans. Nobody is in sight, so we move over on turn 1 of game 2. Okay, let's see how many, or who can move here. And remember, the Germans are 4, the Americans 4. That means both can move. So we've immediately got line of sight, both for the Germans on the bridge and on the road. Americans advancing here, as soon as they go past the tree that happens, and as the bar team go past the tank, looking through the window, in actual fact we might have some line of sight there with the Germans in here, so quite a few rolls here. So we're going to start by testing the man on the road, and going to be spots there by the NCO, by that tree. So let's see what happens. We've got 2, so I think that's definitely engagement. So I need to see whether it's enemy advancing or whether it's in a defensive position. So 5 or 6 would be in a defensive position, and it is. Okay, and I'm going to say that the enemy is advancing, so it's an attack, plus its investment level is 4 plus 1d6. Crikey, that gives us 10. So what that actually gives us is 2 German squads appearing, and it's defensive, so if it was in defence, essentially it's supposed to be in buildings, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put out 2 German squads in this building area. Now before I do that, I'm going to see whether there was anything on the bridge. If you remember, we've made a contact as well as at the garage, so let's have a look and see if there was anything on the bridge. Yes, it would appear so from that roll. And again, let's see if it was in a defensive position. That wasn't, it was an advancing one. And again, roll what appears. Now, that would give us 2 squads again, but in actual fact, we can only have 3 in total for a whole platoon. And so, taking one step back here, is that we've now got an entire German platoon advancing across this area. Their attack is on the manor house, and therefore we've now got essentially what realistically will be this unit who've made contact, because we'll have to have immediate firing. As they're on attack, I suspect this unit here will have to remain and engage, and perhaps we might make use of the half-track. However, on this side, this unit will need to continue to move towards that farm and clear it. I suspect probably it's not going to be engaged in this game at all, but we're going to need to continue to move it across. So the next thing to do is to get the Germans onto the table over here. 1944 Germans get 5 men plus 1d6. So we'll just have a look at the 2 squads that are in the buildings. So one of the units is just 6, the other is 11, and the one approaching the bridge is going to be 7. So this is how things now look. The Germans have appeared on the bridge. We've then got 2 squads. This one, the larger one, it's been seen, but it's actually going to move across these buildings and it's going to try and come out this way moving forward. We'll have to roll for these things, but that's the way that's going to move. And at the front there, the 3rd squad with an MG42 and rifles is going to fire on the Americans, and yeah, we'll see how the Americans fire back. But I've then removed all of the PEFs from this side, and on this side, because there's going to be substantial fighting, the unit that have just come out of the manor house will obviously react to it appropriately, but this unit, having its orders, will continue in this direction. And I'm going to keep the PEF here because we might have some kind of reaction to it. Now the Germans can't appear, but the Americans don't know that they're not there. So let's see how that rolls, but obviously we know where most of the action is going to be. Well, the game obviously hasn't gone the way I thought it might, and the first thing we need to try and work out now is who fires first. So both forces have 4, so we need to see how many we get. So the Germans get 2, the Americans only 1, which means that the Germans fire first. So effectively the Germans have been sitting in a defensive position. They're going to fire with an MG42, which you can hit the NCO and the bar team. We've also got a couple of rifles as well. The other side, we've also got an MG42 team as well, firing at a similar target. So I think the best the Americans can hope for is to be really knocked back rather than knocked out. The MG42 in the building has 3 targets, and with one hit, it is outgunning the 3, so they will duck back. Now, I do think that's somewhat advantageous to the Americans by ducking back there. So I'm going to use the MG42 also that's on the bridge, just to see if there's anything better from there. And that is 2 hits. So just to explain once again, is that we have the MG42 firing from this building. It had 3 targets effectively, which is the 2 men from the bar team and the NCO. You rolled 2d6, can we get above the rep, which is 4? They only did with 1, so they would duck back as a consequence. However, we also have the MG42, which was sighted, along with some rifles, but it's the MG42 that's important really. It can fire within the swathe of those the same 3 targets, and this time it meets its rep by 2, which means all 3 are hit. So we're going to say we've got 3 different dice here. Black dice is the NCO, the green is the bar team holding the gun, and blue is the support officer. And so the one with the bar is killed, the NCO is knocked out of the fight, and the carrier ducks back behind the Sherman. We now need to take a will to fight test. The unit is not less than half in its numbers, but I'm going to take over command as the hero here. He has a rep of 5. Now, because we've been outgunned, we lose 1d6 with this roll. So I've got 1d6. I need to make 1 to 5 for them to continue, because they're not less than half. But if we roll a 6 here, this entire unit, including the hero, is going to withdraw. It's a 3, so they will carry on. Right, that's the end of turn 1, and an extraordinary first turn. Despite the rain and the darkness beginning to fall, this unit is obviously very close to this action over here, and will now be able to move and support. However, the first thing we need to do for the start of turn 2 is to see what happens to the Americans here, who need to get to this farm, clear it before they can come back and support. So who can operate? The Americans unfortunately cannot. So first of all, let's see whether the individual unit moves. 6 and a 4, it'll stay still. Got 2 rolls for the other 2 units. Again, 1 will stay still. 3rd, that would move. So for the Americans who aren't moving, there is still potential German enemy here, as it's in fact the Americans really are static, but they still need to come to this farm. So on this side, who can operate this time? And now under the command of the leader on this side here, we can have some kind of movement, but not with the second unit, because that command is still under the NCO. As far as the Germans are concerned, then they can move, and we need to roll to see how they move. The American unit here have moved under cover around the smouldering Sherman and the hedges. So these 3 units have now become the non-player German enemy, so we need to move and roll rather for all 3. So we'll start with the one which is in this particular building, remembering that all 3 of them are on the attack. So that's 2 reps passed, So what that means is that half of the unit will move directly forward towards the enemy, and the other half, which is going to be the MG team, will look to begin to encircle by going on the right hand side. In doing so, I think certainly there is a line of sight here between the man on top of those stairs. I'll work out the potential site in a second. I just want to do the movement of the second unit. This is the unit in the buildings here. This time there's one that passes. So this unit will move. I can't see anybody, so it isn't firing, and therefore its aim is to take the school to give itself protection for its ultimate assault on the manor house. Now I need to check and see if there's any line of sight with the Americans in here, because I think even though they have orders to take the farm, if there is a line of sight, I'm not sure as yet, then they will react if they're fired on. So let's have a look in a moment. Finally, the unit on the bridge at one pass, so it will move, and that means we can move directly towards the enemy, and I'll move that in a second. Now it's taking the same route with the cover of the building to follow this squad in order to get towards the school. There is a potential line of sight here. We've got the American there behind that tree, and the Germans approaching behind him. So let's test two. So if we remember, we've got one of the Germans there at the back with the American on top of the stairs there, and then we'll take another test here. So our unit of 3 Germans advancing towards the Sherman. Two of them, the 2 rifles on the left hand side, can see this American on the steps and vice versa. And so I think they're both in sight, so therefore they're going to fire at each other. So the Germans are just firing at a single target, whereas the American with the Garand rifle can hit both within the swathe. So let's see who hits each other first, remembering they've both got a rep of 4. And it's the Germans who are successful first. Let's have a look at the outcome. And a 5 is certainly a kill. So he's killed on the steps there, and we need to take a test, I think, within the unit around him to see what their reaction might be. Now we've got 4 men around the steps here, so we need to take a test of what their reaction will be. We have a rep of 4 and passed with 1. They're at more than half strength, so therefore we'll carry on. And here, because of all the shooting and what have you, I think it's realistic that these Americans haven't actually moved forward at all. And I think the one that I've got just by that sort of pink tree there is a line of sight between a German rifleman and that person, so I think it's not unreasonable to see that there is a line and there might be action between the two. Right, so I'm going to say that the German here, next to the machine gun, is going to have a free shot at that American looking in the other direction. If he hits, then it's going to alert the rest of them. If not, we're going to see what happens in the next turn, whether the Americans still or look to advance towards the farm. Okay, that looks like a miss. So that was a miss to end the turn. So I'm going to take the next turn and see if these Americans are going to move towards the farm, or whether they're going to fight behind them. So let's have a look and see who's moving. So both the PEF and the Americans would move. Well, the Americans have started to move, but I think there's another opportunity for a fire for the German to fire at this character here. So we're going to have another go. If he hits, we might get a reaction from the unit. And yes, it is. So the outcome is a 3. So a 3 means that he ducks back, and as a consequence will alert the remainder of the Americans here who have started to move. However, they'll realise that there are actually Germans right behind them, so I think they need to move. Rather than attacking them, I think they'll move into a defensive position. So I've got the Americans now in a defensive position here. I've removed the PEF from there, and I know it's somewhat contrived, but the way the game has actually gone is that rather than remove the Americans out of the game effectively, let's keep them in the game and see how it runs. Now, in amongst this is about 3 Americans with rifles who can see the Germans. I'm going to say that the Germans can fire with the machine gun too, so let's see who would fire first. The Americans. So the first American, I'll just point this out, it's the American who's behind this fountain. You can see the German machine gun team, which is 2 men, and with the swathe can hit both men. So with his rifle, we'll see how he goes on, and that's 1 hit. He will be outgunned when that fires back though. Well, because it's in the open, that's actually a hit, so we've got a hit on each man. Consequence of that. Both should be fine. I think they'll both duck back, or I'll check and see if it's they return fire. So the MG team ducks back, and now we've got a couple of riflemen firing at each other. So it's just 1-to-1 in terms of rifles, and it's the same time now. Because the Americans moved, I'm going to say that the Germans were static, and therefore the Germans are first there. German fires first. What's the outcome? Then it's just 1. This is the American who's the target. He's in cover, and therefore with just a 1 it means he'll just return fire. That's definitely a miss. Second fire, the German returns fire, and again it's just a 1, and because it's a second fire he will duck back. So this essentially is the action from the first game. Now, because we've now turned around and we're starting action here, I'm now going to sort of merge the 2 games together and just play this out here, but I will do what would be the second game, i.e. for the Americans in these 2 units first, but at the end of this turn it'll all become a single game. Okay, so on this side of the table, let's have a look and see who can activate. Only the Americans. We don't have any at 5 with the Germans, so it's just an American activation. Right, in a bit of a Hollywood style, our hero has dashed towards the half-track to activate the driver and see if they can get that one working. On this side we've got a couple of rifles who can actually see the Germans there, so there's going to be a bit of firing. And on this side the bar team and the NCO and rifles were dashing to get into the school. However, on doing so there is a line of sight here with the Germans advancing, so there's going to be some firing there also. So I've got essentially what are 3 Germans in target. So we've got the machine gun team and the rifles. As there was action taking place in front of them, they're going to be surprised certainly from there, so I don't need to see who fires first. It's definitely going to be the Americans there, and we'll see what the reactions are. 3 targets in total, and we've got 1 out of the 2. Again, because the Germans are in the open, it's a hit, so I'm going to say the blue dice is the rifle, the other 2 are the machine gun team, and the machine gun team are killed. The rifleman, I think, is going to is probably going to duck back, but I'll just check. Rifle does duck back, but we need to test now for the will to fight based on the machine gun being killed. Will to fight with a leadership of 4. Oh, they're fine. Over here we've got 2 German rifles, and we've got this bar team just trying to go into the school, so we'll see who can fire first. It is the Americans. Actually hit 3 targets, but unfortunately that's a complete miss. Germans return fire, and that is probably a hit. In fact, the Germans are outgunned because it's a light machine gun that's firing, so what they'll do is they will duck back. And that's the end of that turn. So I'm now going to sort of merge the 2 games together, so everybody is in action somewhat against each other. We have the Germans advancing this way. They couldn't move in the previous turn. They failed to move, so we'll need to see what happens to them in the next turn. The Americans, we have 1 unit which had hidden really behind that Sherman, but it was effective with its firing. Second unit which is moving towards the school. This unit here is defending, and it's also got a bar team which has moved into that building as well. So from now on I'll just move and roll for one single action in terms of which units can move, etc., and have a combined game fighting for the manor house. So which units can go? Not the Germans. Well, unfortunately for the Germans, it is just the Americans. Now I'm going to say it's going to take a turn to activate the driver and for our hero to get on board and be able to fire the machine guns. So we need to do that with his rep, and the rep is 5, so anything other than a 6. And he can. So he's going to take command and he'll activate next turn. This American unit has now moved into the school. I'm not going to say that they can see the Germans through the windows here until they're settled, because it took most of their phase to get in there. But yeah, they're certainly protected by the fact they're into some hard cover. I'm going to say the Americans have moved upstairs to see if they can get a better firing position or firing platform. This American unit are in a defensive position. They're still unsure, in fact, whether there are Germans behind them. So as it stands, they're just going to hold their position, and they haven't got any line of sight on Germans on this side because they haven't advanced. So effectively, that's the end of the turn. So it's a new turn, and the only challenge we've got really with the Germans is because we are, or I am, rolling randomly. It means that the Germans are a little, there's a lack of dynamism. So although we might want to go up on the right hand side perhaps and attack the Americans behind that tank in order to attack the manor house, or take the manor house, they really are compelled to go to the nearest target as the non-player, but that's the nature of the game. So let's see which of the two forces, and perhaps both, can move. So both forces can do. Start by having a look at this unit. We're going to roll 2d6 to see how they operate attacking. If they are going to attack, then this is their nearest target. 6 with a rep of 4, and the past 3 will get all the way up to the tank. Okay. However, there is a point at which they cross the line where the machine gun team in that window might see them. But you're going to move so quickly, I think it's going to be difficult to do it. So I'm going to roll and see whether we get 2 passes to see whether they can fire. We need below 4 twice, and I don't, so they didn't react quick enough. On the other hand, or the right side of it, get past the tank. It's carrying the machine gun, and we've got the American here around the corner. So they're certainly close enough, and I'm going to say 1 is going to be able to fire with the rifle. But we're going to see who would react first. I'll point out it's our hero character here as well. Reaction is 5, and both the same time. So because the American was static, he'll fire first. Hit 2 of the 3 men. Oh, that looks like a miss. It's a miss. So the German firing, and that's 1. The American is in cover. I'm going to give it cover, really. I'm going to debate whether he was in cover, but I don't think so. He's one side of a tank, but it's the rifleman who's firing. So I'm going to say that's not cover, so I think that's a hit. So it is a hit. And a 2 means that he'll be, he'll have to duck back. Move one of the trees there just to show that he's moved out of the way. But actually there's a couple of Americans there at the front which I think can fire. So Americans firing at 3 men. And that's only 1 passing of the open, so it is a hit. 2 black dice are the ones with the machine gun, and that means actually 1 is killed and the other 2 are out of the fight. So 2 knocked out and 1 killed, and now we're at numbers a half in the units, so we need to have a will to fight test here. Will to fight test and pass with 1. Unfortunately, that means that because we're at half strength, those 3 need to leave the fight. Well, it's really bad luck for the German units. We're down to 2 units here. 1 has a machine gun, the front one doesn't. So we're going to see with the first one, the front one, what it wants to do. If it gets 2 dice because it's in attack, it will look to try and storm the school. The one behind it would look to reinforce it, and it might be, based on the outcome, it might be the end of the game. But let's have a look. First unit closest to the school. Just right, I want to say that this German unit can get up to the windows. Some of them are down the side of it, but I think we'll have 4 windows here, and the Americans and Germans are going to fight it out. I'm going to fire first, and it looks like it's going to be the Germans. Scenario, I'm going to say we're going to have, for both sides, we're going to have a maximum of 4 being able to hit each other. I know the American has a light machine gun in there, but we'll say 4 each, starting with the Germans. Where they're going to hit the Americans, but how many? So it looks like everybody's hit. The black dice are the 2 members of the bar team. Although nobody's killed, the output of that is that they duck back. So I'm going to say there's a bit of morale, and they disappear the other side of the building. And basically a bit of a stalemate here. So we'll move to the last unit. See how whether this unit moves to support towards the school. And yeah, no problem. The Germans get to, so that's the end, effectively, of this German phase. So we're over to the Americans. Right, the Americans this turn. I'm going to say that this unit is still in a defensive position. We haven't got anything in line, so it's just going to hold its ground. Might move the next turn, but this one, going to penalise it really and say that that's inactive. On the other side, we're going to get this this half track. It's going to move up to the side of the school. The unit behind it, in terms of the school who've retreated, I'm not getting them in the camera here, but you can just see them there. We'll have to rally because we moved back, but that's all they're going to do. They're going to stay in cover. And we've got the unit which is behind the Sherman there. We've got a target to fire at, which they will do, so we're going to do that during this turn. Right, so we've moved up the half track. It comes into certainly a view of the Germans there, and we'll see who might fire first. Remembering that we're just going to use 1 machine gun, it's the one on the side with our sergeant with a rep of 5, and it's the rep. He passes 2, so he's going to fire first. Now we can cause some damage here because it's right down that line. So let's see how he goes on. In a rep of 5. That's 2 hits, so it's hits, and we'll see how many Germans are hit by it. Right, so we've got 5 men can be hit. The German rep of 4. Oh dear, that looks terrible. That looks like 4 killed, and only 1 remaining. So that's going to be certainly an impact on the will to fight. So German casualties there, and we'll see about the will to fight. Rep of 4. And so 2 passed, I think. Now, what we've also got at the back here are the Americans behind this Sherman along the hedge. There's 4 or 5 infantry there. And it's in line of sight with the Germans. I should have possibly done this when the Germans moved first of all, but either way, rather than this small unit here responding perhaps to that vehicle, instead, I think it's more likely as they're moving in that direction to see whether they or the Americans see each other first. So there's a line of sight, and let's roll. We've both got 4 for the reps. Right, so it's the Americans who fire first. In cover, 4 is the rep, and both hit. So with all being hit and in the open, we've got 4 potentially who are within, well, certainly the swathe of the rifles. 4 is the rep. And again, that looks casualties. We've got 1 out of the fight and 2 killed. And as a consequence, I think we've got just 2 men. I'll move this tree out of the way. We've got just 2 men who might respond in terms of their will to fight. Again, with a rep of 4. That looks like both are covered. Now, I'll just explain the ruling there. Is that they passed with 2 in terms of their rep. However, they are below 50%. Therefore counting as 1 dice, and if below half strength, they leave the fight. Okay, I'm going to stop the game at that point because we've only got 1 German unit remaining, and the chances of it being able to take the school and then on to the manor house is almost nothing. We've got a vehicle here and the Americans really have 3 units remaining in fairly good working order. So the purpose of the game originally was to have two battles, one at this far end where we've got the windmill, and then across here, across towards this farmhouse area. However, fortunately or unfortunately, the German reinforcements appeared straight away and in the same spot. So as a consequence, really they've been sort of hemmed in really, and haven't been able to get the advantage of the width of the game, and we've sort of merged into one single game. And so finally, just say thanks very much for watching. I will put the details together out obviously on the Nuts Facebook group, Nuts Man-to-Man Combat. If you want to join the group and have some thoughts or ideas for the game, then that would be ideal. And thanks very much, as I say, for watching, and we'll see you again next time.